This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
This is Everything Elite, the world's best podcast devoted exclusively to all elite wrestling and the elite extended universe. I am your host for this week. It's your old pal, Iron Mike Spears. Both Aaron and Nate are either still in Japan or in transit, so they've left me here to keep the lights on. But luckily, we have a good friend and past guest joining us this week to help me. It is Kara. Kara, how's it going?
Hi, Mike. It's going well. So I'm Kara. I'm here again. And now that Aaron and Nate are here, it's just a two-person show. I can just absolutely ruin it. Just say whatever the hell I want, and nobody can stop me because I am not at all intimidated by you, which I absolutely am by Aaron and Nate.
Oh, no, I'm totally fine, and I'm aware that out of the three of us, I'm kind of like the pushover of the three.
Yeah, you're like you're very professional and easygoing. You really are my old pal Mike Spears, and I really appreciate that about you.
I like to think that I am friendly. I've quickly developed rapport and become friends. So I'm glad that you're joining me on this. I really appreciate it.
Now, just to be clear, all three of you are sweethearts. It's just that, just looking at Aaron, just his energy and his haircut really gives off the kind of vibe of like a bantamweight UFC fighter kind of guy. And then, Nate is like totally unthreatening, but the thing is, like, I'm intimidated of him because he's a better poster than me. Like, I can't have that.
Yeah, and I've known Nate off and on for several years. I still question at times Nate's true opinion of me. Like, he keeps you on your toes.
I question Nate's true opinion about anything. Like, Nate understands better than anything that, like, reality just doesn't exist anymore. Like, an objective reality is just not a real thing, and we're just kind of amorphously shaping ourselves into our present moment. And that applies, wrestling is one of the most, like, reality is fake mediums. It's one of the best ways to like get your brain into that kind of like psychedelic headspace that the entire political media and everything landscape that operates on now.
Absolutely. Like, I remember saying this a couple months ago. I forgot if it was in a DM or if it was actual post, that like we are like in the hyper normalization of wrestling right now.
For sure. Oh yeah, that's like an old take, but it's real.
Yeah, it's real.
If You got to put this in the show notes, but Nate's piece when Jinder Mahal won the WWE World Championship, like entitled something like "The Orb of Jinder" for Paste magazine, about Jinder and globalization and Donald Trump posing with that big glowing orb. One of the finest pieces of wrestling or political writing I've ever read.
Yeah, no, it frustrates me how good of a writer he is about stuff like this, whereas I'll write 5,000 words about Benkei being named after a Japanese folk tale. Like, and he pulls off that, and I'm like, God damn it, I am so jealous of you.
Dude, I love to talk about Kishimoto fucking... Oh, I was going to bust out the name, just sound really smart, and then I forgot it. But I know about Benkei. I know about he was the big heavy guy who served the other lord, 1300s, et cetera, et cetera. I'm better at the Sengoku period. Sorry.
Yeah, hey, it's one of the things that as soon as I found that out, I kind of fixated on it, and I need to go back and read through all the apocryphal stories.
Look, part of wrestling fandom, especially in these days where New Japan is kind of so central to everything, is realizing that being a huge piece of shit weeb is like actually cool and good.
Yeah,
because like Japan's culture is just like so obviously better than America's. Like, America and the West is a completely bankrupt culture, and we should latch on to like any alternative that we possibly can.
And I think that like just like even with the episode Dynamite last night, there was something to latch on to, because like you had them billing Dr. Luther as Japanese deathmatch legend.
Dr. Deathmatch legend. Yeah. All those FMW tapes everyone was watching for Dr. Luther, right?
Yeah. So I'm really excited to get in some real FMW hours.
What's your favorite like Dr. Luther memory?
I mean, I kind of like just the fact that he exists and has been in a match with like 22 to 24-year-old Masaki Mochizuki, who was forced into wrestling because he was tricked by his karateka. Like, I just love that happened. Like,
I did not know this story.
Okay, so This is later on. So when he was in WAR, Dr. Luther did a little bit of WAR before he was done. But all the people that were brought in by Koji Katao were legitimate karateka's. They were not pro wrestlers. And when Katao died, he, of course, was like the Yokozuna who got forced out of sumo because of his oyakata, but he was kind of seen as like a shithead. But then he started this karate dojo that had a lot of these people come through. One of them was Masaki Mochizuki. And Masaki Mochizuki thought he was just learning martial arts until one day Koji Katao said, "Oh yeah, you're wrestling tonight."
What a world. I always love to think about Koji Katao and just amazing like kind of career that he's had.
Yeah, just his life stories.
Yeah, life, exactly. Just being involved in like so many different incidents, like famously shooting all the time.
Yeah, I that's the one thing I hope we are getting Dr. Luther here in AEW. But before we get more into this thing, just get the plugs and everything out of the way. You could follow the podcast Twitter account at Everything AEW. I did notice that there was like a 2-hour string of just straight YouTube clips that we've programmed it to retweet, but mostly it's just AEW news, things during Dynamite, and usually I think Nate's even doing some of it from Japan, but I've been tweeting on it every Wednesday night. My personal Twitter account is at Fujiheya. That's FUJIIHEYA. Kara is at Karanza. Am I pronouncing that right?
Karanza, yeah. Karaonza. Yep.
Yeah. So follow us there. Subscribe to the podcast. We are members of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. You could either subscribe to the entire Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network or just to Everything Elite. And when you do so, please rate and review us on the podcast platform of your choice. We also have a Patreon, and the Patreon is just, if you're someone who enjoys the show and wants more content from us and our guests, come and support us on Patreon. We have 3 tiers, so for everyone's means and their desire to get into the EE Patreon fandom, I guess, for lack of better words. This week on Patreon, we had the new episode of Wrestling Small Business Tyrants, where
fantastic.
Oh, thank you. I recorded that so long ago, and when I was like listening back and editing it with Murder Brian of Street Fight, I was like, this is one of the more fun things that I've recorded, was just about an hour and a half of us talking about how Mike Quackenbush of Chikara fame was, and still is to this day, a small business tyrant of the wrestling variety. He did manage to sell the Wrestle Factory name this week to a random former Chikara guy who's now opening a Wrestle Factory in North Carolina. So keep on carneying on Quackenbush.
Yeah, no, you can go to the Wrestle Factory all day.
Yeah.
Just great audio. One of the highlights of the Patreon overall. It's the kind of perfect dynamic that I hope to at least capture 10% of today, with Mike just being an endless font of helpful information, and Brian just openly smoking weed on mic and reacting to everything critically.
Hey, Brian is the true internet sweetheart, and he graciously gives us his time whenever we do these shows, and it's so much fun.
I think if Brian heard that, which he very well may, he would absolutely take that as a compliment. The compliment that I meant it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I love my Brian.
Yeah, it is a blast to record with him. We also had Light yesterday morning, which is kind of our Wednesday morning pregame show for AEW. That's weekly. And then next week, I'm going to have a second episode of Breaking Strong Hearts, talking about the first ever OWE show from a couple of years ago. And then also an episode of Light. I don't know when exactly Aaron and Nate are going to be back in the swing of things, but they might have some more content as well. But so far this month, there's been 4 bonus shows, 2 elites, all the run sheets, all the spreadsheets, and a whole lot more, including the Everything Elite AEW Awards, Kara. They're still going on. Did you get your votes in?
Absolutely not. I don't remember to do these kind of things. I don't have a functioning long-term memory anymore. I burned it out with drugs. So I learned about the awards from listening to your episode, and 30 minutes later forgot they were happening. So.
Hey. Luckily, I mean, there might be a moment sometime between now and the 14th where it just flashes.
I'm voting on air.
Okay. Oh, all right.
I can vote in pod at the same time. Let's go.
All right, cool. But yeah, we're doing an awards, and it'll be open until the 14th. I think that's Tuesday at midnight Eastern Standard Time. And I think we're going to be doing some sort of content with that as well. So if you sub to our Patreon before the 14th, you can vote on all of our categories: men's and women's match of the year, men's and women's wrestler of the year, tag team of the year, feud of the year. I'm trying to think of other things we had: show of the year, Twitter of the year, and then like our weird intangible category, which is things that we liked that didn't really fit in. So just like I like the idea of Wardlow. I just think that he's a very amusing thing and makes me happy. So I nominated Wardlow. But
yeah, just the full concept of like not even just like Wardlow, the wrestler of the character, but like posting the word Wardlow a lot, just like hearing those phonemes, very, very good.
It's just like there's a cadence to Wardlow.
Wardlow, yeah.
It feels pleasant to say. It's pleasant to hear. The letters look nice together. Like, it's a great name. So
all right. I'm voting on Aaron. Voting in reverse order.
Okay.
So I'm landed on Intangible of the Year. I mean, we plugged Wardlow, but I think on overall work, I got to go with the sincere vote of Aubrey Edwards, and of course, hometown Seattle-based
absolutely
referee, unabashed Homer. So yeah.
I mean, you've probably saw her a bunch at Defy.
Absolutely. Seen her at Defy. Going to see her again very soon at Defy. There's an AEW relevant show, 31st, that is featuring Strong Hearts, T-Hawk Shima, and Linda Min, of course, my favorite one, who I blanked on the name of, and as well as the Jurassic Express of Luchasaurus and Marco Stunt will be at that show. So
I love that Strong Hearts are just basically deciding in January and February just to show up in America, just doing their things. Going to Seattle. I don't think Shima, has he wrestled in Seattle in his career? I know certainly Linda and T haven't, but Shima, I think this might be his first time in his career. So yeah, no, that sounds really sick.
Yeah, just, Washington Hall, just a little building, downtown. It's great space. I've seen Defy there before. Defy has great presentations. If y'all have never seen a Defy show, their VODs, they kind of do them up like the Riptide promotion out of the UK, where they got this kind of different camera presentations, smoke machines going all off over the place, et cetera, et cetera. Fun vibe. Defy's one of the great indies.
Yeah, I respect anyone who takes like such care about their production and aesthetic levels. And of the Defy I've seen, I'm a sucker for the heavy fog machine and a strong spotlight in wrestling. And I think both them and Riptide do such a great job of that. So yeah, no, it's crazy that they're going to be up there. So what are your other votes that you're thinking about? You can make your ballot public if you wish.
We just going down the whole ballot, or
yeah, let's do it.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Breakout star of the year, I think. While I love all these choices, I think the clear answer is Darby Allin. Just far and away, like, while all Darby, Chris, Riho, and Jurassic Express all have like great wrestling performance, Darby, just normal people like love Darby Allin. Now, Darby is like a low-level television star at this point. He's not like a great pro wrestler on the rise. He's like a guy, like people dressing up as Darby for Halloween. It's like so. And like it obviously just fits the narrative arc of this entire podcast, which has basically been like the Darby Allin cast. I mean, fucking Darby and Zack Sabre alone just tricked everyone into thinking Evolve was good for like 3 straight years. I mean, that's how good the kid is. So
it's insane. His progression as a wrestler is something that, as a real prospect pervert like I am, just like seeing him develop and becoming this, as you made a great point, like this huge star it's heartwarming. You love to see when people succeed. You just love it.
Yeah, like Darby is like as famous as like the 5th most famous person on like the CW drama, which that's fucking insane for like a wrestler to be. For like Darby Allin, like a literal homeless person to be.
Yeah, and I think it's also cool the fact that he's a local guy in your area. He was a Buddy Wayne trainee, and he's you just like watch him, and you can't take your eyes off him, and like he's so singular, and I think he's just so special. Like I totally get where you're coming for breakout.
He's an tour. He's the next wave of pro wrestling. Might vote him for AEW Star of the Year. It's probably a stretch, and forget if he's on the ballot or not. But hey.
I think Bentley put him on the ballot there because
well, that was good of Bentley because he's a little bit
I think Bentley is going to legitimately one day get a restraining order out taken by both him and maybe Momo. I'm very impressed that he didn't he didn't have another moment with Stardom while he was over there. I'm very impressed with him.
Oh, and can I not spoil the moment? I've heard of a very good Stardom moment that Aaron had overseas.
Well, I think we could tell it from our perspective.
I think let's let him tell it. But
okay, that's fair. Fair.
I think he's allowed to tell his own story. But even from 1,000 miles away, it's one of the most compelling pro wrestling stories I've ever heard.
Just the sheer play-by-play. It's going to be a treat, guys.
Yeah.
Well, when Aaron reveals this, it will be worth it. Cara and I were not just building up something for a real flat story. This is actually something with stakes, and in the moment, I was legitimately scared for him.
Yeah, it's like, oh no, Aaron, you're gonna like get in trouble and like embarrass yourself badly in a public place. You know, I don't think it was anything that he could have gotten in like actual legal trouble, but like the actual specifics of it are just so finely tuned to set off every anxiety alarm that I have in my body. It was just an absolute like social disaster situation.
Yeah. It's one of the most like empathetic moments because I've been in that exact same moment and have made the total ass myself. So I understand.
Anyway. Moving on, best of Twitter, Chuck Taylor, no question. Not even discussing this. Moving on.
Yeah.
Best on interviews is the one where it's actually tough. Brandy on this. All right. I thought I was the one who was high on Brandy among this. Was that like an irony vote? I know the Force Thoughtsy wild card.
I think that I put Brandy up. I want to say
she did do a couple like she did like one or two where she was like very clearly imitating that like Cody style of like serious sit down in the road tees. Yeah, those were good.
Yeah,
those are good. I don't think she's the fourth best promo person in the company for that. But sure. Okay.
Sure.
We already done the awards segment. I don't want to linger on these too long. Best on interviews. Cody has all the lines that I remember. He, Carney succubus, stupid dick. That. So I mean, Jericho had a little bit of the bubbly, but he goes too hard for catchphrases. Like Cody's catchphrases are fun because like they're just like human being things to say. Like Cody talks like a charismatic human being and not like a pro wrestling charisma machine, which both are great. But feud of the year. Ooh, I'm good at feuds. Cody and Jericho just for that one promo. That's it. Yeah.
That was such a wild promo to see live, by the way.
That is right. You were live. Golly gosh. I have not gotten the chance to see a live AEW show yet, which is one consequence of them kind of running east of the Rockies this kind of whole time outside of Vegas. So
yeah,
and we'll talk about that. They got some expansion coming up. I'm very hopeful, but yeah.
It'll be interesting when they start running closer to home. I mean, I think that like there's definitely like an outcry there because I do feel like they might be overrunning the East Coast a little bit.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe partially overrunning the East Coast. And I just think they're really leaving money on the table right now, just with missing like their hottest period to like go into the West Coast, go into so many areas. And like I'm probably completely underestimating the logistical difficulties of doing this, as we all are. And again, it's 2020. I don't know how anything in the world works, and I work for a fucking logistics company. Spoiler, but yeah. Show of the year, Double or Nothing. That's like so chalk. It's like it's just not even fun to talk about. Like that's some of these fixes. Like you did the best you can trying to get content out of them, but they're just like there's a correct answer.
Right.
Tag of the year. This is a tricky one. I think like no one tag team has really gotten all the way over. I think I probably just got to go with probably the Bucks just having the best in ring. It's kind of my tiebreaker for it. But Proud and Powerful. You got a argument for them as kind of they had the biggest rise over the year. They kind of came from like local indie guys to being like real charisma magnets. I love Ortiz. Everyone loves Ortiz. Probably one of the most charismatic people on the roster. And Lucha Bros are fucking great. So NSCU are the champions and are credible. So
yeah, like they're the pick. I feel like now that not to influence votes, but it looks like that a lot of votes are in. You kind of have to acknowledge them.
I am seeing the votes. Yeah, I think SCU was, like I don't know how much of an NBA head you are, Mike, but
a lot of my heart towards it went out the window when Dirk retired, but I still follow it.
Fair. That's valid. But it kind of happens in the discussion for in any sport. Like there are guys when you're putting in your MVP ballot, you say, "Oh, this guy really deserves a lot of third place votes. They really need to like get some award points this year." But are they actually the MVP? No, of course not. No, this other person, this other team is obviously better. But they deserve some credit. SU, I think, has been a success as the first tag team champions. And I can't say that in a very enthusiastic voice, but I can say it truly. So whatever.
Sure. Yeah. No, they've existed, and I think that's if you're not going to just have like a world beater feud. Yeah, they're fine. They're fine.
Scorpio Sky got really over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Women's Wrestler of the Year, Riho.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, everyone has really stood out. Nyla offers something, really different than, what we're seeing pretty much anywhere. It's like that kind of monster woman, really only comes along once. It's so rare to like see it done, decently at the level that Nyla's doing it, where she really can work and put in a good match and really has everything together and is going to grow. And I can absolutely see why people would pick Hikaru Shida over Riho. Just in terms of like prefer her work or prefer her character stuff. I think, my girlfriend probably prefers Hikaru over Riho, and she's valid, I guess. So, yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, like they both portray different things. And, like I talk with like people who aren't necessarily like in bubble hardcore people who've watched this, and I do feel like that you will see like newer fans or casual fans like Hikaru Shida more than Riho.
Yeah,
I definitely have heard that before.
I think Hikaru like absolutely like pops off the page. She's got a lot of, she's got that whole, got a great entrance vid and outfit, and just, I'm like the second biggest gear pervert in the world behind Nate. So fantastic gear on Hikaru Shida, and works in a way that I think there's a lot of like real head subtlety in like what Riho's doing, like seeing really appreciating like all the smoothness of like Riho's technical stuff is like, I feel like that's the kind of stuff that really pops out to like someone as jaded from watching a billion years of wrestling that I do. Whereas like I've seen a lot of characters that are as colorful as Hikaru Shida before and great. But that doesn't mean that she's like not also doing a great job of it, and she should be acknowledged as like one of the best women's wrestlers in the world, like for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
And Britt Baker is also on the ballot. I think you could make a decent case of Britt Baker as the best women's wrestler for like the first like half of AEW's existence before they had a television show, which is like not nothing.
Yeah, especially like those preseason shows. Like they definitely presented her, and there were matches. Like, of course, she got concussion on one of them, but like she did acquit herself fine.
Yeah,
so like,
she's always been a very good pro wrestler. She's always been a good pro wrestler, and occasionally a very good pro wrestler. And yeah. So and like I said, I think a little bit of the backlash towards her, backlash is fun. Fan backlash is way fun, and it's fun to see someone get pushed really hard when you think it's above their position, kind of say that they're crap when they're not crap. I mean, there's so few bad wrestlers in the world these days. Like, oh my god, like kids these days do not understand what bad wrestlers look like. Like, oh my god.
Yeah, like we're in peak content and peak wrestling. So like I remember growing up in Dallas-Fort Worth, and we would get this indie. Somehow they bought time on our UPN station, and there were like some uniquely bad wrestlers on it. And then you would have like someone like Paul London, and like this is 2002, 2004, and it's like mind blowing. And then you like think back about the really bad wrestlers, and then like nowadays, I think Joe has said like, when he's done like the Jovember to Remember thing about like how bad some of these wrestlers are.
Oh my god,
don't have that anymore. And it's
like, just go watch like Sunday Night Heat from like 2000. I don't know, like go watch like a fucking Chaz. Britt Baker is a better worker than Chaz. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, and I feel like I've been the most critical person about Britt Baker on the podcast, and
like I think that's kind of like true in like almost every sport. Like people do not understand like how much the baseline has risen, like how much better like your end of the bench NBA player is than like all but your handful of like superstars from the 90s even.
Yeah, Kent Bazemore is a better basketball player than 95% of the NBA were up until like the year 2007.
Yeah. Kent Bazemore would be like the third best player on like the Bulls, on like the championship Bulls. Like I'm not like as insane to say that he's better than Jordan or Pippen, but he's probably Kent Bazemore's better than Tony Kukoc.
Oh, absolutely. That was the exact person I was thinking.
Yeah. Well, you strike me. You already outed yourself as a big European head. You talked about Turkey, so yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Aaron's gonna be so mad we're having basketball chat without him on.
Yeah. We're having some real like Eurobasket hours over here,
and we're absolutely not going to talk about college basketball because it's fake and terrible.
I mean, there's only one college basketball team that I've ever followed, and that was 10 years ago, basically. So it's okay. Shane Larkin's in Europe now. He's having a good time.
Yeah, can't think of a second guy but after Shane Larkin, so there you go. Men's wrestler of the year, I think the men's wrestler of the in every end of the world is Chris Jericho. I had to make a ooh sound because I did remember that his best matches this year were actually outside of this promotion.
Yeah, I didn't think about that until just now, but absolutely.
Yeah. Oh my god. I spoiler for my if I get a Voices Wrestling ballot, which I guess I politic myself onto this podcast, I probably can. But I think Tetsuya Naito versus Chris Jericho from last year might be my match of the year, or close to it. I think very, very underrated match. Jericho was always good. I'm so glad that everyone has chosen to embrace the Judas in their minds and really go for it. So yeah, Jericho, Wrestler of the Year.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. I think all these choices are absolutely valid. Cody, Jericho, Darby, and Moxley. I mean, at that point, those are four fucking superstars that they're. Once you get to the point where you're like that level of like a superstar, it's like pointless to like say which one is really better. It's so like up to personal taste.
Right. Yeah. Like these are absolutely the S tier of the promotion at this point.
If you are a wrestling fan and look at like Cody, Chris Jericho, Darby Allin, and Jon Moxley's year this year and say that. Like you have to say that was great. Mm-hmm. Distinguishing between different flavors of great is it's the least possible thing in the world to do.
Yeah, the granularity is what gets me, and that's why I always dread when I get my ballot. Like I've got like my top 5 of the year figured out because I had to use it for other things, but 6 through 10 is just an unpleasant thing where I'm like, I like all these matches equally, I guess, but now I have to politic for where do I want to get this obscure UT versus Super Shisa match, and how can I get this thing higher up on the final ballot? Like I hate doing that kind of stuff, but like
we both have UT in our top 10s.
Yeah, UT is absolutely in my top 10 and I'm certain there's listeners like who's UT. Go check out UT. He would have been a really cool guy this year in All Elite Wrestler. He's like a 5'2" lucha libre submission guy in Dragon Gate. He ruled. He had like two of my favorite matches of the year. But yeah, no, the granularity is what drives me insane.
Okay, I'm just gonna out and say I don't care about anything that happens. We can get so far into the weeds talking about UT because this is the least essential episode of All Elite Wrestling and everything elite ever. 2 of our hosts are out, 2 specifically because they wanted to go see another wrestling promotion so bad they flew to another country to get away from All Elite Wrestling. We're only here because we're too fucking poor to go do ourselves.
Yeah, I if I'm going to Japan, I'm not going to go to Wrestle Kingdom.
So I watched Dynamite this week, but I've got to be honest, I'm in a fucking wrestling feud, man. Fuck.
No. We will get into running down Dynamite. This is an interesting week, and I wanted to hear Kara's takes on the awards. So we're going to get into that in a couple minutes. So. I know everyone's expecting us to get angry at stuff, and there's stuff to get legitimately angry at.
Oh, yeah, no, but you know what? It's nice to kind of promote peace in the world, Love and Energy 2020.
Yeah.
We'll have time to thoughtfully critique.
Yeah,
every piece of terrible bullshit that they've done, that they put in our eyeballs this week.
Yeah, 2 hours of it, especially the first 60.
Women's match of the year. I actually had some bones to pick at the time when I heard about this one because my choice for this didn't actually make the ballot. I was a really big fan of Riho versus Emi Sakura from Full Gear.
I was high on that too, but a
lot of people weren't, and I'm not sure I see it, but whatever. I thought I get that Sakura can get really sticky, and. So if people don't really appreciate that, then I understand. Gato move has been one of the most divisive, stylistic topics of all year. So I get it.
Yeah,
But
I forget which one I nominated, so I will take my own. Unless I was the person who nominated like the Joshi's 6-1 tag at Double or Nothing, unless that was me, I goofed up.
it does not say here who nominated what, but the Joshi 6-1 tag, probably, having watched it back recently, actually, it probably is your right answer. Really just quite a bit of fun. Really got everyone going. But I think the women's division, I think these are all, roughly in that kind of, none of these really in that transcendent range that, like, you're over, I hate to talk about stars, but like you're over 4.5 star range where it's like, oh, you gotta go see this match or you're missing out on like the story of pro wrestling. But like also like I think these are all like really good, and it's like, oh, if you're an AEW fan, if you're a wrestling fan, yeah, these are good. So like I think there's, again, not a lot of separation here, but that women's match, just for where it was placed on the show, got everyone hyped up about like the possibility of the Joshi being a thing. Got like at least like 2 or 3 people over that the crowd had like never seen before, like Riho and especially Yuka Sakazaki were just like over like gangbusters in that match.
Yeah. I was watching the Tokyo Joshi Pro show, and I was like, how much I miss Yuka Sakazaki, and how great she would be in this division right now. Like,
my God, she should be the champion.
Yeah. Just imagine just like Yuka Sakazaki having to deal with the Nightmare Collective just really just amuses me.
Oh no, she'd be. It's so sad to think about it. She'd be bullied. I mean, that's kind of what they're doing with Riho too. It's just, and we'll kind of get into that. I have a big stylistic point about Riho. I could yell about Riho for hours, but I could yell about any of these topics for hours. Men's match of the year, I think it's probably going to go down as Cody and Dustin. I think that's kind of your, again, that's kind of your chalk choice. I think all of these were great pro wrestling matches. Young Bucks Private Party, great tag team match. Christian, I don't know if like any of these 4 matches were like the best like kind of match of the year, like in their style. You know what I mean? Is like there were better like straight baby face versus heel matches than like Jericho versus Cody this year. There were better like young guy versus big heel matches than Jericho versus Darby, and there were better like cool tag team sprints than Young Bucks Private Party. Cody and Dustin, was there a better blood feud this year? Maybe, but people weren't watching AAA, which was probably most of our audience, and they haven't seen it. So
yeah, and I don't know, at least for like me, like that match was like the moment after years of like being surrounded by Cody, but then like seeing him like, okay, he actually is now this person to this audience that he's always been portrayed as, especially after he left WWE.
Oh yeah. He's like unquestionably like the guy, and like has the stuff to be the guy now, and like so I think giving it in like when you factor in the context of like what Double or Nothing is, like seeing that story in that moment, which I try to like when I talk about match of the year, I try to like, that's really the one time where I really do want to take a match in a vacuum as much as I can. But I think the tiebreaker, of taking in that whole moment around it, which really informed that crowd energy and how they worked to it. Yeah, that's the match of the year. That's the AEW men's match of the year.
Okay, I think those are all the categories.
Those were all the categories. Wow, God, how much time have we burned?
Well, we have already gone half an hour, and that's fine because Nate and AB are not here, so we could do what we want. And I
got nothing better to do.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed hearing that. And if any of the listeners are interested in doing this, go over to patreon.com, Everything Elite, and sign up. It is open to all tiers. So,
every single one of you can just open up that list and just kind of call one of your friends on your internet mic and get your vape pen out and just start debating. You can have the exact same experience that I just had right now. Really leave the podcast kind of moment.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, so those are all the things with Patreon this week, and I think now, Kara, we get to play a game that I don't think you got a chance to play the last time you were on the show.
Oh, I know for a fact that I have not gotten a chance to play this game.
So
I'm very excited to play this game.
Kara, it is time to play the game that's taking over the internet. It is much more popular than Tekken. It is, I don't know what the current top game is on Twitch, but I have a feeling that this, if we ever made a streamable comparison of this would be the biggest game in the entire world. It's time, Kara, to play Elite or Delete.
You want another top game on Twitch, Myron Mike Spears?
All my esports are out of season right now. League doesn't start for 3 weeks, so I don't know who's streaming right now.
You were gonna, friend. You forgot a very specific thing, which is that it is a AGDQ weekend, the biggest speedrun community in the world. So the top game on Twitch.tv right now is, of course, Final Fantasy VI.
Is it SNES version, or is it a? Or are they having them do like the PlayStation cut or like the tablet version for this?
I don't know the version, and I have not watched any AGDQ this year. I kind of fell off of it this past year or two. I guess I'm like no longer officially a gamer, which is fine.
Hey, it's okay, but
I'm at peace with that.
You know, the older I get, I kind of feel like that way. Like I tried to boot up a League a couple weeks ago, and I tried to play, and I was like, "This is trash. I can't do this anymore."
Oh yeah, no, my brain doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, it's completely fried. But
yeah. Like I can like sometimes get it together for like long enough to like form a smart sentence or something, but like actually doing like fast twitch things in the moment, like no. Now I finally understand why it's like impossible to be an esports player like when you're past like 25. I get it.
Yeah, no. It's one of those things like, yeah, other than like the crazy routines, like you're done. Like as soon as you hit like 23, 24 and you're like, this is all I've done for the last 7 years, and you're completely losing your synapses, you're done.
Yeah, my brain and fast twitch fibers don't work in the same way anymore.
Absolutely. So we have an interesting episode to talk about. This week's episode was from Southaven, Memphis area, apparently. And if you were on Twitter or watching all, you know that this was a very, very divisive episode. You maybe would call it the worst episode of Dynamite so far. But what out of this episode, Kara, was your favorite thing? What was the one thing that you would say was elite from Dynamite last evening?
What was elite from Dynamite last evening? I think that gotta go on board just because I'm finding it really on the spot here. But I think Arn Anderson's performance as the official coach of the Nightmare family really stood out as like kind of something new. I think there was a lot of just like good kind of agenting and smartness in that opening tag team match between Private Party and Paige and Omega. They don't have an official team name, so not really working. But so just a lot of smart spots between the Art Anderson stuff, between that kind of spot where they went for kind of miscommunication spot, but then Kenny was able to anticipate it. Just really interesting stuff that I haven't seen in a pro wrestling match before, so it shows that their kind of like creative agenting muscle is still like kind of working, and all Elite Wrestling is a good wrestling promotion to watch.
Yeah, like with that opening tag match, I thought it was real interesting how they were like, okay, these guys aren't on the same page, but they're not gonna blow up at each other. That was so smart to do.
Yeah, I feel like they kind of primed your brain for like this, like almost everyone watching AEW has had their minds rotten by like 20 years of like WWE to like think they know exactly beat for beat every single beat of this storyline where these two partners are having frustration with one another and turning on one another. And like they went out of their way to like kind of acknowledge and subvert that just enough, like saying, yeah, it's like we get why that story is like a good basic kind of story to tell, but we don't have WWE brain rot, so we can throw in a couple like little interesting twists along the way and like kind of keep you engaged.
Yeah, and it's interesting with like Private Party in general, like they've been clearly cycled down now from like, the highs of highs, like the match that was on the on our ballot between the Young Bucks, which was like their first match on national TV, and they set an all-out sprint against a team like Hangman Page and Kenny Omega, which they have now won 3 tag matches in a row. And they're not a like consistent team. There's no team name for them, but they're so much considered better wrestlers in this company that it makes sense that this is a tag team that's thrown together. They're on a streak. They don't necessarily like each other, but are successful. They're able to beat a team that is younger, but like, and has shown flashes of brilliant, but hasn't gotten it together. And I think that that's a real interesting kind of idea to have, especially in a promotion like this, whereas like you said, WWE brain rot has made everyone thinking that, okay, Paige and Omega should have blown off like 2 weeks ago. It's nice seeing how this is going and how they're teasing the misfires, but then they get it together at the end of the match, doing a combo V-trigger buckshot lariat. It's cool.
And yeah, I really like the observation that you had, like the fact that, yeah, sometimes when a tag team is like a mid-card tag team and like two wrestlers are like main event wrestlers, it's okay to like tell the kind of story that they told, where you have some sort of miscommunications between the tag team, but also some communications. Like they worked out some tag team moves, they did some double teams, and they were like really telling the story of like, okay, these two guys are trying their best. They're not going to turn into clowns and shitty at wrestling just because they're feuding with each other. Like it's just like that little bit of nuance, like even like just in the booking and layout of that match is like really the hallmark of like good All Elite wrestling, of like how it is a legitimate alternative to WWE, even when they're telling a very similar story, just like they in the small moments to like keep it fresh.
Absolutely. Kind of following up, like my favorite thing on this show, you mentioned Arn a little bit. I love him as this competent head coach character.
Yeah, like when's the last time you've like just seen like a babyface manager? Like, yeah, again, just like spots that nobody else is doing, like a kind of really like an MMA corner man almost, just like, you know, the kind of guy who fights like, oh, watch the knee, watch the counter, take that away, you know, that kind of thing. That's like really ubiquitous and obvious to like anyone who's like been in a fight or like watched an MMA anything. But just like we have pro wrestling brain, which is mostly WWE brain, that says to us like managers do this one thing and exist within this one plane. Where it's like, no, you can just like do like normal person stuff as it and have it be simple and compelling and tell stories that way.
Yeah, and you could tell the story is even by something that I know people are frustrated with, but I actually really liked, and I'll defend it. And the fact that like Arn Anderson, after the match with the Rhodes Brothers versus Lucha Brothers, Cody was about to make his decision on the MJF stipulations, and Arn was like, hey, we didn't talk about this. This is in your best interest. Like, that's such a smart babyface manager thing to do. And when's the last time we've had a good babyface manager?
And, you know, yeah, it's such a smart thing to do, even though it like kind of took away from the heat of the segment. I think, you know, it's like the big pop, what the audience obviously wants right there is like, obviously, yeah, they want these two guys to like beat each other up right the second. But, you know, Arn giving you this like babyface, smart, but like believable story is like, no, my role as a manager is to say like, hey, no, don't do this like stupid, like legally binding thing while you're like heated up from this match. Like chill out. Let's talk it over for a second. Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah. And I think it's the same thing going into the segment right afterwards, where it was noticeable that Cody never came out. And yeah, they didn't like, really talk about it. It's like, yeah, no, Arn probably was like, no, don't go out there.
Yeah, it's just like refreshing to have like a character in a wrestling show that's just like a sane person.
Yeah. Like the one person's like, I've been through this shit. I know what happens here.
Exactly. Yeah.
Don't do this. So yeah, I loved Arn Anderson, and it's something that like it took me a little bit to rewire my brain to like, oh, we've been so used to heel managers, and like I can't even think like the last competent babyface manager, unless you want to call Gato when he was with Okada a babyface manager, but like it doesn't happen, and it's so cool to see one that
Gato as a manager is such like a manager ass manager. Like all he's doing is just like, and it's like he's got, you know, not a whole lot of Kiwi. I'm sorry, I've been thinking about him screaming the word Kiwi all week. And we can't talk about anything other than Wrestle Kingdom. It's fucking Wrestle Kingdom.
Yeah, just oh god, yeah. And he looks in his bucket hat now.
Oh, get it best.
But yeah,
okay. But yeah, no, just this concept of like he doesn't like really Arn Anderson doesn't really fit this mold of like pro wrestling manager. He really is like a coach. Like that really is the best word for him.
Yeah. So we've now talked about some really good things, but on Wrestle Kingdom week, AEW arguably put out one of the worst shows they've had. And with that, let's bury some shit, Kara. What do you want to delete from last night's show?
There is nothing in the world that I love more than like spooky, slightly horny witch stuff. So for weeks and weeks, I have been holding on to the Nightmare Collective. Just like, you know what? This is going to pan out. These are all great wrestlers in their role. AEW is smart. Every time that we've given them time, they've really panned it out. But like now they've finally they finally got me. They finally got me to like give up on an AEW angle, on an AEW storyline that I wanted to love the entire time. Just I don't know why it was this week that finally broke me. It's just because everyone's been obviously against this Nightmare Collective stuff for weeks and weeks, and I felt like I'm the lone holdout. Maybe it was like finally interfering in a title match, just like AEW really promised us this. Like I was very excited more than maybe anything else on the show for Riho versus Statlander to go out there and just wrestle have a professional wrestling match. And I assume there would be some angles, but like they didn't even it wasn't even like you're kind of like let them wrestle for 15 minutes, have their good match, and then do the angle at the end. No, the Nightmare Collective just like from the go, just like, oh, we're turning this entire thing into a backdrop for our angle. And this match you wanted to see, this doesn't matter. We, our spooky witch shit matters. And I'm like, okay.
And it was so frustrating because you would have Brandy on commentary, and I've been a high person on Brandy. Like I thought, as we talked about earlier, like her sit down interview stuff was some of the better things in the company, and I thought that she is a interesting character. But then on commentary, she just was trying to bury everything, distract everything, and I was like, oh, okay. And it was like audibly like taking me out of the match because I thought that like until it completely went off the rails, Riho and Chris had, for people who've never had matches together, I thought they had some really good chemistry, and I thought they were telling an interesting story about Riho like being this smaller wrestler who her best thing is like she's wrestled for so long and she's able to use her size for a benefit against someone like Chris Statlander, who is clearly more of a powerhouse kind of style. And I was really enjoying it. And it just completely, just like you had Brandy, and then you had the Nightmare Collective coming out, and then you had Bryce Remsburg disappearing. Then we have Japanese deathmatch legend Luther debuting, and then we had like the finish and then the angle afterwards, and it was deflating. Like that's what I came out of this. Like it was like a deflating fever dream of a segment.
Yeah, and I think that I finally pinpointed it. The fact that I was so excited specifically for Riho versus Statlander, I think it might be the best matchup they could possibly put together of two women on this roster right now in terms of my personal interest in it. So, and the fact that they didn't even let them try to have a match, it was just from the jump. I'm going to disagree with you in that I thought Brandy was actually very funny.
Okay. What was your favorite Brandy line then?
Oh, I don't remember any line she said. I just had a funny vibe. My brain is working right. But you are right that she completely took away from the match from the go. And when it turned into 5 minutes in, it's like, oh, we're not even just gonna let you wrestle. It's just people tripping you up at weird times, but then kind of denying it and being a little coy about it. It's like, no, just either let them wrestle or get it over with. Don't drag this out. It just took up time, took me away from something I wanted and gave me something I didn't want at the same time. And it just, it was not a good professional wrestling segment, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think the thing that really compounded this is that then they followed it up with this Christopher Daniels and Sammy Guevara match where the finish of the women's world title match was that Chris had her up for the Big Bang Theory, but then Kong held her legs and Riho was able to turn into a pin. And then you had another banana peel loss when Pentagon came out, and I thought Penta was funny going
super fucking funny,
but back to back, and you're just like, oh, this is okay. We know that this has been an underlying thing between the two, but there are ways that they could have executed this without doing the same thing twice in a row in less than a half hour.
Yeah, that one didn't bother me quite as much because I didn't I feel like there's a kind of implicit understanding what we have right now is oh, anything Christopher Daniels touches is this angle right now. Whereas I feel like there's an implicit promise of at this point by AEW that Statlander versus Riho was gonna be a wrestling match and that they failed to deliver. And then Yeah, the second one after it, I don't think it got any worse, but it certainly didn't bring anyone back up if they were kind of deflated after that. It's just kind of let that kind of just like deflating note linger. So I understand why that was just as harmful.
Yeah, and I guess like overall, and this might just be me, I'm gonna put this theory out to you. If you like take the show and you separate into halves, clear halves at the top, hour 1, hour 2, the second hour of the show was some really solid, like to the level of what Dynamite was programming, but you had such a weird and like disappointing in a lot of ways and awkward in other ways, and honestly like just like fever dream like stuff for that first hour that I feel like that a lot of people were just like,
why are we down on are we down on a Page and Omega versus Private Party? Because I feel like you're lumping that into the first hour when I thought it was perfectly competent, and especially that it told all those good stories that we talked about.
I guess like Private Party, like I've seen like now enough that like Private Party, like my disappointment in that match was like I think talking with you made me come along and like this match a little bit more. But like initially when I was watching it, I was so big into Private Party, especially coming out of the tag team tournament. But like the more I see them, they're a team that I wanted to see them like expand and get more ring experience, because this kind of match was not a match they should have had. Maybe that's my frustration with this. That's why lumping it into the whole hour.
Yeah, I do agree with you that like Private Party are not at the level where they're having like blow away like normal matches, like you're kind of like sell a bunch hot tag tag matches at this point in their career. But I thought that in that spot for what it was, that kind of was demonstrated by the fact that they got beat. And I just kind of felt like they've been slotted as a mid card tag team that are kind of prospect guys, and it feels honest that they are not the best at long matches yet, and the fact that Omega and Page were in there to spice it up, keep things interesting by incorporating their angle just a little bit in creative ways, and really kept that match up just enough. And like, yeah, no, I feel like I just like I've always been a lot more honest about what Private Party was. To like, I guess I never got like super caught up in that hype, because like I thought like, yeah, they're great spot guys, and they're like 25 and 22 years old, I guess. So yeah,
I guess that was like I got caught up.
Though we did talk about like a parallel world conspiracy theory about like Mark Quinn's age.
Yeah, because I thought that too. So
yeah, right.
So like the idea is that there was a theory, and I don't know how this got spread. Maybe it was Cage Match that like had like an incorrect age and made everyone think that Mark Quinn
might have had an incorrect date. That like it was a common belief that among like many of us that like Mark Quinn was like in his mid 30s or something like that, and he now seems to be listed everywhere as like 25 years old. So he must have entered some sort of like Bernstein Bears world portal.
Hey, so. I mean, I feel like that kind of like makes a lot of sense now with like that, because like for a while it's like, is he really that old? Like it's the whole Keith Lee thing. Like no one knew Keith Lee's age for the longest time. So, yeah. but yeah. Before we move on, what other thing was there? Anything else that you really, really disliked about the show? Like I feel like we covered the whole Nightmare Collective thing in like the first hour pretty well. But was there anything else that kind of stuck out?
We can go through the rest of the show. What I wanted to get in here before we left the seg, you can't call the segment Elite or Delete. It's a terrible name. Delete is owned by the WWE. They own that verb. There's a whole chant about it. Like we can't have the slightest implication. Like that word is ruined now. It's gone. And like I don't think you're gonna reclaim it. So I gotta delete.
Okay.
I don't have a better replacement. So I'm just doing your very typical online leftist thing of like just saying your thing is bad and have no better idea.
Yeah, it's canceled now. It wasn't my idea. This was a Bentley show, and Bentley now.
Oh yeah, Bentley's canceled.
Yeah, Bentley, it's your fault. You're canceled, buddy.
All
right. So we didn't get to cover it last week because of the holiday, but the ratings came out this afternoon, and AEW was back with a 947,000 total viewership, 6th in a time slot for 0.36 demo. This utterly spanked NXT, who came back with their first live show since before Christmas at 7 721,000 with 55th so this is the second straight week that they were out of the top 50 demo wise, and they had a 0.19. Interesting day, like TV wise, because this was the first Wednesday that everyone was really back, like airing things. Jeopardy pretty much spanked everyone, and it just had like 14 million viewers, and then everyone else kind of. Sorry?
You think Jeopardy had?
I tried out. I used to try.
I tried out. You do, yeah. For sure.
Yeah. I
used to amount of our readers are like that kind of pathetic nerd.
Oh yeah, no, like definitely like this. I had a former coworker who went on Jeopardy. So like when I found out that she did, I got very jealous. But like I didn't watch this, and I'll go back later and watch all these things. But everyone wanted to watch Jeopardy, so that's why things were. Did you try out for Jeopardy? Are you much of a kind of a?
I believe, yeah. I tried out for multiple kinds of Jeopardy. I got to the second round of Teen Jeopardy, so that's like ultra nerd shit. Okay. So like Quiz Bowl adjacent nerd. I gotcha. Right. No. But it was like, it was the legit Teen Jeopardy show. Like they brought me in for the audition. And so
okay.
On, so.
Oh, geez. All right. Yeah, no, I never got past the online test.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I just like the whole thing with like Jeopardy now. Like now it's like become so much like a generational thing that like when I think about like Teen Jeopardy, College Jeopardy, and all this, and then maybe this is going to be again social mores. I feel like that a lot of this week was also everyone just going like, oh, Alex Trebek is probably going to die.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
So that's why we're watching.
Yeah, he's said something like he's hinted or said retirement, I believe. Like
right.
Even with that away, you get kind of it's a little bit of a Jushin Liger thing going on.
Mm-hmm. Sure. It's like the only other thing happening this week other than Jushin Thunder Liger's retirement.
Yeah. Because we all know who the real Jeopardy goat is.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Brad Rutter, I mean, this is another era. Like this is what we're going to, like, I understand, like, he was, like, before Ken Jennings and before, I forget what the Austin guy's name was, and before the current guy. But, like, this is, like, again, he is, like, the Tony Kukoc there. Different era. So yeah. I was trying to do a sentimental thing. I meant the real goat was Alex, but like, sure, we can talk like actual things too. Oh, sorry. That's on there. That's on there.
No, that's Iron Mike's Tears. He's got the Jeopardy info. He's got Brad Rutter, Tony Kukoc. Let's go.
Yeah. Let's get with it. Do you have any thoughts on ratings in general? Like, I don't think I've ever talked to you, Kara, about ratings about like AEW versus NXT.
I find that I don't like ratings talk. I think people way overanalyze weekly ratings talk. As a person who's like worked in statistics before, the level of like noise and the level of so many different variables going into this, like people talking about ratings in the case that like, oh, here it is how much like it's interesting to talk about ratings and like, here's how you're doing compared to your like TV deal. Are you going to get like renewed? Is this television show going to exist versus this other television show? That's legitimate talk. People who say is like, oh, the ratings are down 10% for the Dark Order segment, fucking depush them immediately. That's you're fucking reading tea leaves. You have no idea what you're talking about. Just stop, please. You're just using fake statistics to reach a conclusion that you already have. Stop.
I totally see where you're coming from. I guess I'm someone that I find it interesting, and also I think that's also people making these determinations like this. This is still week 14 of TV. Like the sample size is so small. Like as a baseball nerd, like you don't talk about statistics until June. So
and, have you ever like seen those like big like when like one of the sites that like talk about AEW ratings, they like put on the spreadsheet of like, here's what the top 50 shows and here's what we're ranking things against, and like the numbers were like at the end of the day we're like comparing to like fucking Alaska highway truckers versus like Alaska PD. Alaska PD is definitely a real one. These are just like such tiny blips in like the overall media universe, like coming from week to week. It's just like in like this giant ocean of like the content world, like getting longer term trends off of it, like talking about AEW ratings in a week's like in like over like a year's time. It's like, oh, is Turner like gonna renew them when they come back up? Like that's the sort of ratings talk I care about. And I think that overall, people are focusing on this like this week to week like AEW versus NXT battle, which is when the real battle is like, okay, Tony Khan probably sold AEW to TNT on the promise of what, like 400,000 viewers a week.
It
like,
was about that.
Yeah, so like they're either like meeting or blowing the pants off of, you know, the original expectations like every single week. What NXT is doing in comparison and what these week to week fluctuations are for based on and trying to base booking around for popping ratings week to week versus, you know, trying to build up a long-term trend of a healthy company and telling storylines. You know, I don't. That's where I think like the focus on like weekly ratings battles is misguided, but also it's super fucking fun. So
yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, it's your team versus my team.
Yeah. Oh, and yeah, there's like a clear baby face and a clear heel in this one too. So that's why it's fun.
Yeah. I totally get where you're coming from. And that's something that I'm trying to like keep in line. Like I have the spreadsheet that like I'm trying to get things, but like I keep on looking back at it and like a data. It's like, okay, this one was during a week where like the ecosystem was completely off. So should this really be counted as data? And it's just hard to work with.
Yeah, but the ecosystem is like off in some way, like every week, and like also all those bad weeks like actually happened. You know, like we have to like count, like they did like sell ads based on that and had to recoup money in the real world based on that. You can't really throw that data out in the long-term scheme of things, but also this is why like trying to go week to week isn't the thing, and the longer term trend is.
Yeah. No, I totally get where you're coming from there. So let's run down the show. Anything you want to jump in on, please do. So this opened with a video recap. The second week in a row they've done this, kind of doing like previously, where it was featuring the big Elite comeback in Jacksonville and Hangman doing commentary for the main event and refusing to come out with the Elite and celebrate in the ring, and then the Jericho and Mox thing.
All right, I'm gonna jump in. We got third chair Delphi Meower.
All right. Hey, Fi.
She can't hear. I have headphones in.
All right.
All right. Go ahead.
So then after that, we cut to the arena. Dave Brown, former Memphis color commentator, was out to do commentary for the opener, which was cool because I think it's the first time Dave Brown ever did nationally televised wrestling. And this was the Page and Omega match versus Private Party. Page and Omega again defeated Private Party when Kenny hit the one-wing angel on Mark Quinn after a joint V-trigger and buckshot lariat. I really liked, we didn't mention this before, Dave Brown out there was kind of refreshing. It's nice seeing these old-time territory guys like get into what's going on here, kind of like how Tony Schiavone gets into it. It was nice to see Dave Brown being nice and complimentary.
Yeah, I feel like there's kind of like an effect with like anyone like over a certain, any like wrestling person over a certain age. It's like, I feel like we're almost like a little bit like either embarrassed or like defiant to like, you know, please like this thing. It's like, no, really, we think this is the best kind of wrestling. It's like, and so like when other people can like really embrace that and get into it, even when they fall outside the quote unquote demographic to it, it's like, oh yeah, this is just, the world is like a fucking big joyous party. And it's so glad to see like anyone who wants to fucking participate in it. So yeah. And so I had that same feeling, I think, when Taz was calling the show last week, even though, you know, completely different generation from Dave Brown. And like, you get a lot of that energy with Schiavone every week too. They're just like really happy to be here, even though they're like a little befuddled, need to have things walked through to them because they've been out of the game for a while, or just like this, they were so used to certain other things. They're just people who are really open to new experiences, really add a lot to the world. I think is the bigger philosophical lesson from bringing Memphis legend Dave Brown on the commentary. I'm
going to take that away from this episode. Thank you, Cara, for imparting that on me. I think that's a very salient point. After this match, they had Pac, who was doing another beatdown of Michael Nakazawa. He had the Brutalizer screaming for his rubber match. And so, yeah, it was a little hard to tell it was Nakazawa at first. They just actually never showed his face again. But yeah, there's really only one guy with that hairline on the roster. So yeah, no, like there's only one guy who doesn't who's bald, who does not completely shave their head.
Right.
So I guess QT Marshall, but yeah, so that happened.
I can tell QT Marshall and Michael Nakazawa over it. And also, they were both on the show, so it would have been a big continuity error.
Yeah, there we go. We go. So yeah, that was happening when Paige was drinking out in the crowd. Was not fazed at all by Michael Nakazawa getting attacked. He doesn't care.
He doesn't care. He's a nihilist alcoholic millennial. Yeah, he absolutely gives off the kind of vibe of like a guy that is the like exact age that Hangman Page is. What is he, like 28?
He is under 30. He might be 29, but I think 28 or 29. Yeah.
No, he is 28. He is younger than me and depressing. But he just gives off the kind of guy who just like decided to get really into alcoholism at 28. You know, really just really smart person who just kind of like understands that he's not quite good enough right now and everything around him is bullshit. So it's what substance abuse is for.
Yeah, no, and it actually, for him, Paige is like the person who's kind of always, and I think they've kind of tapped into it, like him kind of floundering and finding his place. And I feel like this like aspect of him is really relatable, especially with like how he is as both a person and online. It seems like I feel like they've tapped into it, and I think it's been borderline amusing at points, but I think that it's something that each week he's been getting bigger response, so it's working.
It's interesting because it's like a pro wrestling storyline that like is trying to evoke like a kind of like quiet pathos. Like it's not a heel turn as of yet, and I'm not even sure that it is teasing a heel turn. Like I don't like pro wrestling brain rot says like, oh, this is a tune up for a heel turn. We're not going to turn him. Whereas like me just like watching this as a pro wrestling show, it's like, oh, this kind of sucks. This like talented dude is like fucking depressed, and like obviously he's doing like a cartoon version of like a spiral into depression and alcoholism, but like this is, I mean, you can totally, I still view Hangman Page as like a baby face, you know, going through some shit right now and not like someone who I'm waiting on to turn heel.
Yeah. And I feel like that's something that the way they've played off of this and the fact that he's like so frustrated and he's teaming with someone who he doesn't seem like he wants to team with, but he's still succeeding.
Yeah.
And that just like that's like burying his loathing a little bit more deeper in a way. Like it's very relatable and interesting. Like that's now we're talking about that. Definitely has been one of like that was one of the highlights of the night. So after that, we had the two angles going on there. There was the hard sell 3-shot of the announced crew women's world title match. As was Riho defeated Chris with a banana peel. I thought that the Luther reveal was ridiculous, and then Riho popping him in the stomach ruled and made me laugh.
Yeah, the Luther reveal was like, I think that was the exact moment where I was like right about to like go all the way out on it, and then like immediately just Riho. I think the splash like just as much. Like I was already popping for like Riho just immediately going after this like 300-pound deathmatch legend.
Yeah,
with a body splash, but yeah, the little punch that she gives him in the stomach at the end is Riho's great.
It was like a touch that would not work for anyone else, but Riho just popping him one.
Yeah,
on her way up, getting back into the match.
Getting right back into the match, but just like one's like, no, fuck you. Yeah,
it was so great, and then the match. I feel like we kind of hit on it before, but afterwards we had the big scrum with Sheeta. I think Big Swole was out there as well as Sunny Kiss. Mm-hmm. We're all kind of fighting them off, but Britt Baker staying put in the crowd and kind of vamping up that I'm good over here look to kind of finish out this segment. So I thought that this was, and they've made this into something for Miami next week. So I thought that like week to week continuity wise, this made sense. But after like all the deflating stuff we talked about before, it's just kind of like, okay.
I think the Britt Baker heel turn is like another thing where people are getting another. I guess like pro wrestling brainworms is like the theme of the show now. Like where a lot of people are like getting very annoyed. It's like, oh, why didn't Britt just turn heel and put her through the table? It's like, no, that's not her character. She's not like a person who gets like super violent angry. She's just like kind of very annoyed that the crowd is turning on her and like is kind of leveraging her place as like an attractive white blonde athlete who like really does have the promotion behind her a little bit to just kind of feel this like sense of entitlement. And like, yeah, that's like a little bit of nuance you can do a character. It's like not everyone has to do the same, be a heel the same way. It's like
it's interesting.
It's interesting, and it plays into, I think it plays into what has happened with Britt already, like as well as you can. It's like kind of, it's making the best out of like something pretty good, you know, not like lighting the world on fire, but like using kind of authenticity to like not just hard rebooting Britt Baker or like forcing her to keep being something she's not, but like just kind of like flowing naturally into her next thing in an honest way. And I really appreciate that kind of attention to detail.
Yeah, and I think that like this week was the most interested I've been in Britt Baker as a character, just staying in the crowd
Yeah,
and just throwing up her hands like this
yeah,
than she's been in months. So it's
yeah. That's a
uh,
good heel turn. It's like
yeah,
she didn't do anything. She's just like, no, I can't be fucked. It's not my problem.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
perfect.
Yeah, it's worked really well, and I'm interested to see where it goes for it because now like there's stuff going on now with this Nightmare Collective against the babyface women that's going to go on, and it's kind of like how is she going to play into it other than I'm cool over here?
Yeah, because it doesn't really feel like she's joining the Nightmare Collective at all, and that's like the kind of pro wrestling brain rot thing. So they say
Yeah,
like, oh, we can only do one feud at a time. What the fuck? But it's like, no, Britt Baker's just her own character.
yeah, yeah. After that, there was a super bad Kip Sabian video. Kara, I don't remember anything from this video. Do you?
Wasn't it more like a Penelope video? It kind of struck me
Okay.
as more of that. Most of what I remember from it was just a lot of telling the kind of story of Penelope and Sabian, but mostly her doing a lot of like cool spots, which is the thing she does as a wrestler. She has a couple of great cool spots, and told a little bit of the story of she punched Joey in the dick that one time, and then they got out of the break Excalibur did mention the kind of real life Penelope and Joey relationship ending for. So that is now in canon part of the story as well.
Yeah, yeah, and it's interesting how Joey at least seemed to be like I remember there was a shoot video on High Spots that he did before TV started up there. He's like, I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do this. And then I guess now either they decided that this is best or they're just going to tromp around through it, but it's at least giving Penelope something to do.
Joey seems like the kind of guy who's like smart enough about like wrestling and like the dialectic that he is both like legitimately like angry about this at the same time, but like also can like work and make money even like while still not being fully on board with it,
Sure. Yeah. No, it makes sense.
Like really like that's what being a good worker is really in the end. And Joey Janela is a fantastic worker. Unblock the account.
Yeah, unblock the account. I haven't done anything wrong to Joey Janela. I think that was all Aaron and Aaron's fault. I mean, Taub's barely on the show anymore. So yeah.
Joey Janela was in the best pro wrestling match I've ever seen live. So
was that Randy Myers match?
Randy Myers versus Joey Janela in Defy Pro Wrestling. Go watch your local indie. Your local indie is always going to have like one guy who you're always going to like scream about to the rest of the world, who you think is secretly the best wrestler in the world, and everyone's going to think you're insane. And I think anyone who's been to Defy says that Ravenous Randy Myers of British Columbia is like that guy who like should be on AEW.
Yeah, like I'm trying to think of who would be the one in upstate South Carolina, and I guess people would say probably Tracer X, maybe. So
New Japan Pro Wrestling alumnus Tracer X.
Hey, he is in the PWX 16 with I think it's Quado's not coming up. I'm blanking on the Young Lions who are. I think Clark Connors is going to be in that, so I might go for that.
Defy Wrestling. Clark Connors. I saw him in an 8-man there. I thought he was the third best guy who saw in the match.
Hey,
he's gotten much better. I went to the Super J Cup back up here, and he was in that, and the dojo system works, baby.
Is he another buddy guy?
I believe so.
Okay, yeah. Big fan of Buddy Wayne trainees, especially Darby, and of course the true top gaijin Rebel Kill.
So. Rebel Cow. Yeah, looks like Clark Connors is both a Lance Storm and a Buddy Wayne guy.
Interesting. That is not what I would expect with him going up there, but good for him.
From Snoqualmie, Washington, which is where the waterfall in Twin Peaks is.
Oh, that's right to my interests. Okay.
A little bit Washington lore for y'all.
I appreciate it just because like I've never been to the Pacific Northwest, and I love Twin Peaks, and I didn't know that. So
highly recommend it. The real diner from the show is a place called Tweed. It's about 15 minutes down the road from Snoqualmie, and which is about an hour outside of Seattle. It's a pretty easy trip to do if you're a touristy around the PNW.
All right. I think sometime that I'll try to pull it up there. Also, Ren Narita was the other person I was thinking about. It's Ren Narita and Carl Fredericks in the PW16. So.
All right.
That's interesting, at least to me. So after that, Christopher Daniels versus Sammy Guevara. Sammy got the distraction win with the Penta coming out and asking him to do an Arabian press, which was frankly hilarious, but I was frustrated with it. I'm looking at my match notebook, and I thought that like Sammy took a lot of the match before like going into the distraction part. So I thought that was kind of interesting when how they're portraying Christopher Daniels in the doubt. And as you said earlier, this is going to be his thing going forward. So I thought that was interesting.
I do not remember a single thing from the match personally.
Okay.
I think I had I completely had tuned out from the Nightmare Collective stuff, and I kind of had that same thought as soon as Christopher Daniels came out. How do you feel about this botch storyline? I don't know where I'm of mixed opinion about it. I'm not gonna call it a success, but I kind of think. But when I see it coming up, I'm like, I don't know if I care about this. It's kind of a weird thing to address, and I like Christopher Daniels, and I don't know how to feel about this.
Yeah, it's like
what I get is I think a little bit of the intention, but I don't know if they're kind of nailing it. It's
right. Yeah, it's one of the things that other than the Penta bit, how ridiculous that was. I thought it would have been interesting if the finish would have been okay. Daniels goes for the best moonsault ever, and then misses one of the springboards and falls, and then Sammy gets the pin out of there because he's a scumbag shithead. Mm-hmm. That would have been a more satisfying thing personally to me. But having Daniels doing this when he is a guy that, I mean, when you talk about wrestling, that's kind of a rote point with him. I don't know how I feel about this as a use of him right now, unless there was legitimate health issues. So if this is the kind of way he has to do until he gets better or until he segues, then yeah.
Keep him off TV. This is worse for him than being on TV because he's not getting anyone else over by it yet.
Right. Yeah, no, totally.
It's just oh, Christopher Daniels is in a weird place, which again, I appreciate the verisimilitude of them telling stories like this, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. After that, we had Dark Order came out. It was not the full Creepers. It was Evil Uno, Stu Grayson, the Beaver Boys, and then the mask guy with the skull on the mask.
Yeah.
Trying to recruit Daniel, saying your fingerprints are all over wrestling in days. He turned it down. There was a big brawl where the Bucks and SCU came out to even the odds there. So
I feel the segment was fine, but but it was a fine segment after another segment after one of the worst segments that AEW's had.
Right.
So I think if you had reversed the order of the last three segments, that Dark Order, the Daniels and Dark Order stuff, I would have been a little more into, coming off that first tag team match, which I thought was pretty good. And I would have said, yeah, that was pretty good. And then the women's stuff would have got me down, and then I would have gotten back up from these matches coming up, and it would have been a fine AEW show. It's just the kind of layout of the show really hurt them.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's something I didn't think of. If this was earlier, switch those two matches around, because I thought Evil Uno kind of caught a decent promo here. I don't think he's
a good promo.
Yeah, I thought this was fine, but yeah, I think that's a good point about just their. And it does seem to be a recurrent thing that necessarily their layout and timing has not been one of their strong suits this early in their run.
Yeah, I feel there is a little bit of where you can see a little bit of the seams to there is one part of the world in which the WWE may have an advantage, and just by dint of doing things from 40 years, Kevin Dunn has learned one or two useful things, maybe.
Right, yeah,
that the competition can't just conjure out of nowhere.
Yeah, timing out a show is a very complicated thing, and that's something they're still trying to figure out. But the next match was my favorite match of the show. I love this tag match, as we talked about earlier. Lucha Brothers versus Cody and Dustin Rhodes. They're going with the Brotherhood thing for them. Dustin got the final reckoning on Phoenix, which was kind of surprising. Phoenix taking a fall like this in this match. I really liked this match. I thought this was really fun. It was great. This was one of my favorite Lucha Brother tag matches in a while.
Yeah. I thought it was a really good match. I'm kind of I'm a little torn by the finish, just because I don't know where they're going with the Lucha Brothers being heel. It always feels kind of out of place for them. But like you said, right. I really liked Arn, being a really effective babyface and really getting in there and doing these kind of things that you really never see out of a pro wrestling manager, and then getting involved that way and really leading into the finish. And so maybe they're kind of demonstrating to the Lucha Bros hey, stop being heel. Maybe that's the storyline they're going for.
Yeah,
going to a face turn. But yeah, but the action of the match itself, these are four great pro wrestlers. I think nobody can it's kind of hard to dispute that, unless you like want to be a real asshole about either Cody or Pentagon, but you're out to lunch.
Yeah, and I thought that this was just a competent, solid TV tag match, and just was a good fun time. And then, do you have any other thoughts about the match before we get into what Schiavone and the whole like kind of promo half hour that came up after that?
Pretty good promo half hour.
Yeah, we had Schiavone with Cody. Arn interrupted saying, I don't know how MJF believes he has strokes, but we'll talk about it and get back to you. That went straight into MJF and just general MJF, like just being a absolute dickhead. He counted down for Cody to give his response. DDP interrupted. DDP plugged all of his shit that he's ever done in the last 20 years. And that had an MJF live tweet. And that was great.
This whole segment, and both of them are great. Big fan of DDP. I have gotten into DDP yoga at one point. And I think he is just a likable and charismatic man, especially and understands the corniness of his plugs. And yeah, MJF legitimately actually, like when he pulled out the phone, it was funny enough that like sending out an actual tweet just like absolutely popped me probably harder than anything else on the show.
Yeah, there was a lot of like really funny little moments on this show this week.
Yeah,
we were talking about it, and that was like one of the best ones.
AEW like nailed a lot of little things this week, but they did not land a bunch of the big things.
Yeah. So that led to DDP winning a fight, and JF called up the motherfucking Butcher, the motherfucking Blade, the motherfucking Bunny. DDP dropped him he's in a 60. He dropped him with Diamond Cutter, so I'm not going to bury a guy with like his health things. And then Bunny blowed him, and then QT and Dustin made the save, and that leads to a match next week. First DDP match, I think. I don't know when he's wrestled last.
No, I think he like was actually retired. Like I know he worked for TNA, like like weekly pay-per-view airs, but like I don't know if he had anything after that.
Yeah, it says his last. You can't trust Wikipedia for that. It might actually be.
I'm going to Cage Match.
Yeah. So they're having a trios match at the U next week, which will be interesting with basically MJF and Butcher and the Blade versus DDP, Dustin, and QT Marshall. So that's going to be an interesting tag match. Like
DDP has done 2 nostalgia rumbles for the Fed, whatever. That's not real wrestling. His last pro wrestling match before that was Diamond Dallas Page and Kevin Nash at AWE Night of the Legends at Augusta Expo Center in Fisherville, Virginia. Diamond Dallas Page and Kevin Nash went to a no contest with 2019 Tag Team of the Year, the Rock and Roll Express.
They got 2,000 people for that show. All right, yeah, that makes a bunch of sense there. Yeah,
so, fucking DDP and the Rock and Roll Express. Hell yeah, I'd go to that show if they ran it fucking tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. Look at the rest of the show. Finley's on it.
Perry Saturn, Sanjay Dutt.
That is a wild show. Tommy Dreamer versus Terry Funk.
We're just talking about like the indie show that has like one like super worker out of nowhere. Was that? I don't know if we recorded that discussion or not, but like Sanjay Dutt just like being like a 4-star worker, amongst all the CW Andersons and like Dennis Condrys of the world.
Yeah, wow, that is. And you have to know that the people in Fisherville, Virginia, were going nuts for the Rock and Roll Express.
Oh, of course, I would go nuts for the Rock and Roll Express. What the fuck? Who wouldn't?
So, Kara, I used to see big time wrestling shows when they come through the area, just because like I was so dire for some kind of wrestling that I would go to the Spartanburg War Memorial, and this was like 4 years ago, and the Rock and Roll Express, like just like seeing how a South Carolina crowd was reacting to them 20 years past their peak.
How many 80-year-old ladies were in that crowd?
It was like probably about a good 1/3 of the population were women who had their AARP cards.
Hell yeah.
It was great. It also had Scott Steiner in a cage match. It was a wild time.
Steiner's still wrestling, isn't he?
Oh yeah. He's doing some stuff, I think, for TNA.
Yeah. I realized he was getting like semi-active booked somewhere. That's awesome.
Pro wrestling's great. Yeah, you gotta do something when you're not busy managing your Stuckies franchises.
I legitimately, and I believe I said this in one of our secret group chats, but I legitimately believe like DDP wrestling is like a draw. that's like, oh shit, like people are gonna come to their TV sets or people are gonna come to that show because like Diamond Dallas Page is like a professional wrestling star. Like I could call up my parents and talk about Diamond Dallas Page, like kind of star.
Yeah, no, and especially like he was someone that before he got into wrestling, he was big like in the music promotion scene in South Florida. Yeah. Like he ran bars in Fort Myers. So like,
DDP has like gigantic Florida energy.
Yeah, so it's like he makes perfect sense. He doesn't just have like Florida energy, he has like South Florida dirtbag energy in a certain way.
I'm not enough of a Florida connoisseur to like really tell them apart.
Yeah. He definitely seems like someone who would be running like a dive bar.
I mean, then again, you have like no idea where anything in California is located. So.
Oh, I absolutely no clue. I have no idea. I'll be going to my brother's wedding out in California in a few months, and it's in like the mysterious town of Glendale, and I don't know anything about it other than apparently that's where the Costco is over near. So, yeah. So getting back, we only got one more match, and then the final angle talk about here. Jurassic Express versus Best Friends in Orange Cassidy. Jurassic Express beat the Best Friends Orange Cassidy when Jungle Boy got his first direct fall in AEW when he pinned Chuck with a victory roll.
They were really big on pointing that out too. So it sounds like they're pretty serious about this Jungle Boy. Jungle Boy is the guy, 2020 Jungle Boy.
Yeah. And did you watch the Road to Memphis YouTube video?
I did watch both Road to and Being the Elite had Jungle Boy in very big spots this week.
Yeah. We'll get to I watched Being the Elite before we recorded, and there are some things about Being the Elite I want to get to. But the thing about the Road to was like they made a special emphasis about like Jungle Boy, like sitting down saying like people think I'm too small, people think 20 pounds too light, but I think I'm like ready now. And I was like, okay, this feels like Jungle Boy 2020 mindsets upon us.
Yeah. So this match was probably like the biggest thing pushed on the Road to. So we should probably point that out. They really got everyone. They got all of the Jungle Express to like give a kind of in the Road to style, like the semi shoot, semi work. It's not Luchasaurus telling a joke. It's like pretty close to fucking Austin Matheson talking about playing a dinosaur on television.
Yeah,
and the real hardships that they've all encountered as like pro wrestlers and so on, and really built up this match, and then at the end led to the angle of this match. It's like, oh, but Trent and Chuck said we can't hug on TV, and we're gonna hug if we want to. Was the big way to put over this match. So that's the level of kayfabe that we're at in the Road 2 shows. It's like, and everyone's having fun going along with that. So,
yeah,
wonderful.
Yeah, and this match was just like a fun match. Luchasaurus looks better, and Marco is ridiculously over because this is apparently near his hometown. So it was a good time. Like really, like after you got out of that like really dire half hour, like they finished the show pretty strong, which is kind of wild considering like how bad that half hour was. Yeah. I like this match, but I can't remember anything specific from it. Just because, this was a fever dream show.
I remember the pinfall, like that flash pin, and they put it over long enough was just enough to like break through my like complete wrestling feud. Yeah, because even if they had put on a good show, like I did the full like 3-night stay at for like Wrestle Kingdom New Year's Dash. Completely reversed my sleep schedule, so just like completely OD'd on wrestling. Even if this had been like an average show, I think I would have been tuned out for a lot for it, but
sure,
not an average show.
Yeah, absolutely. And then
anyway, my point is that Jungle Boy pinfall was shocking enough, well done enough. It really cut through my wrestling haze and got through to me. So
yeah. And now we're in Jungle Boy 2020 with that. The final angle was the big answer from Moxley. They did the local heat, and then the big tease where Moxley had the T-shirt on saying that he was going to join. Went on a little long. Then he
went on way long,
like about 3 minutes, which made me think again timing on the show. Like I think they sent him out there thinking this was going to be 10 minutes, but they needed 15 out of them.
Just nobody for a second thought he was bought that Moxley was doing the inner circle. This felt so WWE, like in a way that like almost nothing else did. Like the extended part where it kind of like feels like, okay, you're insulting our intelligence by telling us to believe that like Moxley is joining the inner circle. It's like, it's not like, why are you playing this out for like longer than a beat is like non AEW. It was the second worst thing on this show to me. The middle of this angle, and the angle was long enough that it had a distinct, decent beginning, a terrible middle, and pretty good ending. So
right,
yeah.
I just really think, like, going back to like what we're talking about, I feel like that they mistimed this show, and this was a 10-minute angle that they needed 15 out of. But because like they didn't do enough planting the seeds of doubt about Moxley and Jericho's relationship. Maybe they thought that we all had like the common knowledge that wasn't there for that. So like there was, like, you were absolutely right, Cara. There was like no doubt whatsoever. So you were just waiting, tapping your toe, waiting for him to.
He's gonna turn.
Yeah.
And then when he did, it was great. When he did it, when he was like, "Oh, by the way, I lied," and he fucking kept the fact that he kept the 4 GT keys at the end, I think, was what absolutely tied this segment together. It's like, oh yeah, that is why he went along with it. He just really wanted that fucking sweet car. Okay, Mox rules.
Yeah.
So like I get that. It's just that went on way too long in the middle. Way too long. Felt really bad, and then it ended fine.
Yeah.
It really a microcosm for the show.
Yeah, like. It went on a little long. It was a show that it could have done some tightening up and taking out some things, but it ended up being fine.
Yeah, and you can kind of like focus on the bad, or you can focus on the good, and I think that's both very legitimate, because I think that they're both very, very present and loud.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably about a good way to talk about that show. They taped Darby Allin versus Jason, why I call him Jason there. Brandon Cutler, Nyla Rose versus Shauna. Billy and Austin Gunn versus Sean Spears and Peter Avalon, and they had the Memphis Legends segment on Dark. So
that was kind of sad we didn't get a bigger Memphis Legends segment on the show. I thought that was something they could really do to like be like cool wrestling while specifically doing something that WWE would never fucking do. Like, and I think that like Dave Brown was like their one nod to it, that like I'm glad they got in, but I think they could have spared a good like 8-minute seg off, maybe cut off the end of that last segment to get a couple guys in the ring and wave them and so on and so on.
Yeah, and especially like when like the Rock and Roll Express, which you've used
before. Rock and Roll Express for like professional fucking wrestlers.
Yeah, like there's stuff to do with that. So like that's kind of weird. But so that's going to be on Dark. I guess like the whole thing of Austin Gunn match was that they were supposed to be a Dark match from last week. So maybe this one actually makes tape. So that's what's going to come up there. Of course, the last one before they go on the cruise ship is the show next Wednesday from Nate and my alma mater, the Watsco Center. I went to a bunch of Shane Larkin games there. So that's like straight up there. Pac versus Darby Allin, which is a match I think Bentley and I will probably come to blows about.
I'll come to blows with myself about it.
It's just going to be that match is a match that I didn't know I needed until it happened, and then as soon as it's announced,
AEW is so fucking good.
Yeah, like this is like
this is like why I like can't get too down on the Nightmare Collective stuff, because like my thigh just knocked something very this is why I like can't get down on AEW for like too long, even when they like do legitimately like shit at my television. It's like, no other wrestling promotion is gonna give me fucking Darby Allin versus Pac in like a fucking crazy college crowd on national television. It's gonna fucking rule. Are you kidding?
Yeah, and if they play this right, and if I was given like the promotional thing, and if anyone from the promotions listening to this podcast at this point, you have to get Sebastian the Ibis there, and there's enough U grads around there that I'm certain that you could find like Alonzo Highsmith.
Also, it's Bash at the Beach. Someone's got to take a bump into the water. Probably going to be Darby.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't know if they're going to do a pool inside there, but there is the giant ass pool that the University of Miami preposterously has in its student center outside. So there is that too.
And any water, I don't care how contrived it is, Bash at the Beach, someone's got to go with the water.
Absolutely. So the other 3 matches, there was a match actually that was announced as we're recording. Kong and Mel versus Hikaru Shida and Chris Stat. The trios match we talked about earlier with like MJF and crew versus the Nightmare Family, and then Sammy Guevara versus John Moxley.
Oh wow,
that's a match that I feel like they would hold off for a little bit, but they're gonna fucking doing it in Coral Gables. So hell yeah.
I think Sammy is like kind of. I think they're fine with like Sammy just like being a little bit of a lost post in this
right.
thing. Like they kind of understand that like Sammy isn't gonna be needed to have like a big match with Moxley until like fucking like 5 years from now. So like, you can just burn these things on TV, and he's gonna give you like a good like 15-minute wrestling match. So
Right. Yeah.
smart.
And he's been great in this role, and he's good as a little chicken shit here. So I'm looking forward to it. I think that'd be cool. I think that's going to be a pretty exciting episode of Dynamite. Do you have any other than people needing to get wet in this show? Is there anything else you're hoping to see in this like last landlocked show before they go on the cruise?
Like I said, anything that would pop you as like a Miami faithful. I think that one of AEW's big strengths is that they're really willing to go with like local audiences and like emphasize where they are, playing into like unique venues or like these kind of theme shows like this in a way that like WWE like is trying to, say that every show like emanates from the same, raw set that is kind of like this omnipresent neutral place.
Right.
Whereas, so yeah, just like any, I don't know enough Miami specific references, but like if you pop for it on Twitter really hard, I will be 100% right behind you. That's what I'm looking for.
All right. So I'll say three things that they should have then.
Right.
One, they did make a reference to Calle and Cafe Versailles, which is the big like Cuban diaspora is basically based there. So, and with Cody being Cuban, like that's an easy reference for him to make, and he will get even more over on me there. Sebastian the Ibis, and then if they make a Coral Castle reference, I'll be very happy.
I'm like a big like paranormal pervert, so I love Coral Castle.
Yeah. Darby should be doing like his big like pre-match videos they have. It needs to be him shot at Coral Castle the night before.
Yeah. Just let Darby skateboard all down Coral Castle. Fuck it.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. So that's what's coming up there. Other stuff coming up. They have one match for the cruise, Jurassic Express versus Jericho and Proud and Powerful. Austin Gunn signed. Seems like Sadie Gibbs. I saw a tweet where she's talking about like moving her dog to America, so maybe she'll be around more. And then, like you alluded to earlier, they're finally crossing the Rocky Mountains with the show in Salt Lake City and Denver area. But I wanted to get to BTE before we go because
I also I saw a tweet from aforementioned Aubrey Edwards that kind of teased that like more shows might be forthcoming to the West Coast. I don't know if she meant generally or if she was specifically teasing, her hometown of Seattle. But obviously, I am hoping for the former as for the latter, as I would love to see AEW and am too lazy to leave my hometown.
Oh, I don't blame you. And Seattle has a lot of venues. I feel like in that like nice area, like sub 10,000.
Yeah, especially like maybe like go down to like Tacoma where like the Thunderbirds play right now.
Okay,
it's probably one of the better places to do it, or Kent. That's probably one of the better ones. I mean, I don't really know in terms of what you could do in a venue in the real like kind of downtown transity area, but
right.
I'm not like a venue pervert, so I'm not the best person to ask.
Yeah, the only venue I really know of in the Seattle area, of course, is the Key Arena, and that's more because of Dota than anything. So
no longer the Key Arena. I believe it does not have a name at the moment, and they are tearing down all of it except for the roof, which they are keeping in place and building an entire arena around it, which is very funny.
Yeah, just like whole Seattle sports history, like what they're doing with the arena is kind of amusing.
It's strange, but it will exist in the near future. I have seen a wrestling show at the Key Arena. I saw Daniel Bryan's retirement show. The last WWE show worth caring about.
Yeah, no, like I'm totally on board with you there.
As evidenced by the fact that it wasn't even Daniel Bryan's actual retirement show, so it doesn't even mean anything anymore. So fuck that company.
Yeah, that's WWE in a nutshell. So before we go, from your recommendation, I went and watched this week's BTE, and this
very specifically sold you on BTE by mentioning that it very prominently featured the word titty.
I just was wondering how they were going to work this in here.
Fantastically, is the spot of the show.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So this was the Jurassic Express and Jen Sturger, or her name was Jen Sturger.
Jen Decker, yeah.
Yeah.
I have brief notes. I can do like a bad version of Nate's BTE recap.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, so BTE recap opened up with I believe this is episode something. It's called "This is for the Juggalos or the Juggalettes," something like that. It's whatever Superhuman's catchphrase is because he was there. I forget if this guy's canceled or not. Like, I think he was at some point, but also like he seems like the kind of guy who would be anyway. And like you can kind of just like tell by looking at him. It's like, oh, he seems like a lot of fun, but it's probably like said something really problematic. But I'm just gonna go along and have a good time with him.
Yeah.
he yelled and jumped through a table, did a spot. Kazarian said "do ya," which I just want to mention that they snuck a very like serious and somber line read of "do ya" into like an episode of Dynamite a week or two ago that really popped me.
I never picked up on it. So like he's wearing this T-shirt now, and I didn't know that, but yeah.
Anyway, so that is another thing, just like most of SCU, that they just kind of, I didn't really like at the start, but just by repeating it over and over, they have drilled it into my head, and now I pavlovianly react, which is like pretty much how all of pro wrestling works, and the Young Bucks get that better than anyone. Cut to the theme song, then New Year's Day party over at the Jacksonville Stadium. Tony Khan showing off his like gigantic television, just really flaunting that kind of vibe. It's like, oh yeah, Tony Khan's not actually a babyface. He has $1 billion. I don't want to like him. He throws fancy parties like this. And like I as someone who has like been in grad school before, like I have the experience of like being a person who is out of place at like a party that is like way too fancy for me, with people who are much older in status, and like just like seeing like Cody felt like really in place at this party. Like the Young Bucks felt like kind of like we can sort of get it, and like seeing Nyla Rose at this party is like the most relatable fucking thing in the world. She's like, I'm having a great time. What the fuck am I doing here?
It was definitely her and like Bryce that I'm like, okay.
Yeah, Bryce. God. Oh, what a worker.
Hey, I mean, went from like running a t-shirt shop to now partying at like a billionaire fail son's like look at my toy.
Son. Excuse me.
Sorry?
He's a success son. AEW is good.
AEW is good. Like that is fair. That is fair. I apologize, Tony.
Yeah, no, like a fail son is like Dixie Carter is a fail daughter.
Oh, wait, no, Dixie's a very specific kind of like Dallas Fort Worth fail daughter.
Yeah,
like straight to the core. Like I went to high school with Dixie Carters. Like yeah,
for sure. But AEW is good. So Tony Khan is officially a success son. Very rare, but good to see there's still good in the universe out there. Hybrid 2 over at the Jacksonville practice facility. Jack Evans is insane and cutting a promo at the camera. They cut a promo on the Jacksonville's place kicker, who I do not know the name of because I am like very proud to be like free of the NFL. I talk about like that, like I'm coming off opium or something, because that's kind of what it's like 2 years clean. So know nothing about the NFL, but he Angelica kicks like a 40-yard field goal. He has said on Twitter that this is his first time kicking one of those silly American balls, so who knows what kind of promo he's in. Jack Evans yells some insane shit and does a flip, which was, of course, the best. Orange Cassidy is here being the holder for some reason, and then he does Orange Cassidy spots on a tackling dummy. Always good to have Orange Cassidy on the screen. A lot of people pop because Orange Cassidy was on the screen, probably.
You see, this was like you led me in because you were like what you mentioned on Twitter last night, but this was the thing that stuck with me, was Jack Evans just being a complete and utter psychopath person. Mm-hmm. Whenever they just need to have like Jack Evans.
Every time he's on TV, I think Jack Evans is like one of the biggest stars in this company. He's like just such a fucking presence and can flip and work and like sell like a fucking ragdoll, like the best I've ever seen. Jack Evans is just an all-out, just stand-up crazy person. I'm so glad he's on national television.
It makes me so happy to have him back like this. Like after like years of him in Mexico and then Lucha Underground like this, like he's now like back, and he's not very different from like.
No, he's been this exact same guy for like 15 years. It's so good.
Which also he looks like.
Yes.
Well, he would look like 15 years later, which is great.
Yeah. Like the line between like Jack Evans and Marco Stunt is like not large.
Oh no! It basically Marco came along like when Jack did. Like he'd be the one that Shima goes okay, and then like takes him to Japan. Like has like a really weird 2 years in Japan, and then ends up in Mexico for the next decade and a half. People forget about him, then he reappears, and everyone's like, oh yeah, this is that guy.
Yeah. I keep forgetting I'm actually leading the segment. I can't run a segment. I'm fucking high. Jungle Express are lined up to do an interview with Jen Decker. It's funny because they're all the wrong height. They're kind of making fun of WWE's funny height obsessions. So like, I believe like the first shot is like all of them are the same height because like Marco's standing on an apple box and like Luchasaurus is like doing the splits, and then like they do it even worse. So like Marco gets super tall, and then Luchasaurus goes down. I don't remember the exact heights they all were, but they're making fun of the WWE. You get the joke.
Mm-hmm.
We can move on. Then they cut to some more takes of them doing the interview. Marco is just very obviously being a doofus, trying to get Jen Decker to corpse the entire time. Just actually like shoot creepily, like flirting with her. Like I really hope he got a little bit of consent before doing that in a minute, but also it was kind of funny, so whatever. Was doing that through all the shots, and then every time Jungle Boy was attempting to get a line in, he kind of was sneaking a peek at her very like one-strap dress and kind of mixed up the word title with titty. About like 2 or 3 different times, Jungle Boy just saying the word titty and just Freudian slipping over and over, and everyone just losing it.
And like he tried to say tit for tat too, and he made
tit
that
for tat. Tit for tat. That was the line he was tripping up. It's like tit for tat, and then the last segment he was attempting to speak about his bona fide win over Chris Jericho, and of course he instead mentioned his boner. It
was like worked on a meta level other than like genuinely like being like, okay, we see what you're doing here. And I thought that was like genuinely a pretty amusing part. Like this was like one of the better episodes of BTE since I like eyeballing back in.
Recapping it does not do it justice. Everyone was very funny here. Jungle Boy is like an incredible babyface. I think it's his year. And like between like his performance, he gave like 3 different like great performances this week between Dynamite, Road 2, and BTE. Just week of Jungle Boy, you know?
Absolutely.
So next segment, Leva Bates, librarian. She takes away people's like sinful things, like a fucking video game console or a scotch or some sort of treat, and replaces them with books. Marco very matter-of-factly says that he can't read, which popped me.
That was a good line.
And then it turns out that Leva is, of course, playing the Nintendo Switch and eating the sweet treats and drinking the booze for herself, just kind of like really settling into this wine mom sort of energy. Like, yeah, like, okay. I don't know where this is going, but gotta fill time on BT, whatever. Next segment, Kenny and Riho are backstage speaking Japanese. Kip and Penelope come up. Kip Sabian is just being a huge asshole, like obviously trying to provoke Kenny into like signing an intergender match between the two of them. And Kenny is like kind of not having it. Kenny is like, yeah, sure, you know, okay, you two are great, sure, whatever. And he's like, can we go now? And then they try to leave, and a very small Riho is blocked by the very mean and blonde Penelope Ford. And Penelope just calls Riho a bitch, and Riho just gets gigantic puppy dog eyes, looks very distraught, like she's about to cry, and just turns, speaks Japanese to Kenny, and is just looks very distraught. Kenny's trying to calm her down. Just please don't bully Riho. It absolutely got Penelope over as a heel to me.
Yeah,
just Riho. The fact that like again, Riho is like has a lot of a nuanced character in which you can kind of like do a lot of like infantilizing her and like having her look super vulnerable in this moment of like, oh no, she's like a tiny 4'10" lady, but like she can also be the person who will just, you know, fucking wipe out Japanese deathmatch legend Dr. Luther and give him a pop in the stomach. So
yeah, no.
Completely smooth in the middle of a match too, and keep on trucking. So that sort of charisma and vulnerability, but also like fighting spirit, for lack of a better word, and technical skill is like really the total package with Riho. She's great.
Yeah, that's it. It's like one of those things that like with this like Penelope, this was the most like I've ever had an opinion on Penelope Ford was during this thing. It was during this angle, and I think a lot of it was the fact that Riho is this very special, and I know I use this word a ton, but singular kind of performer and wrestler, and for all the reasons you gave there, and I thought this was really interesting.
Yeah, Riho is like a legitimate ace of their women's division. She's special. She's like, there's like only like 10 people on like Riho's level in terms of like that, having that like something in the world, you know, to me at least. So like, yeah, and Penelope is like fit like well enough into her role that like, oh, I want to see more of this. I want to keep seeing these matches, and I hope Penelope continues to acquit herself or better. So yeah, this was probably like the most legitimate thing on BTE that like hyped up a few that, you know, isn't really mentioned anything else, but like got me legitimately interested in it. So it's kind of interesting how they're building actual segments on the show. You know, next thing is, you know, a little bit more of the Adam Page and Private Party interactions with Hangman Page being very drunk and Private Party, you know, who obviously enjoy a little bit of the alcohol themselves, but still are trying to reconcile with their like sort of jerky friends problem drinking. It's again, it's a very relatable millennial storyline, even if they're all doing a very cartoon version of it. I just want to point out one of my favorite recurring bits in the world, which is Hangman Page's like very white ass trying to sing and dance to Private Party's theme song and getting it wrong every single time he saw them. That was even on this episode of Dynamite. He did it in the middle of the match. Caught me huge. I fucking love every time Hangman Page comes into a segment like, it's a private party. It's so fucking funny every time. And Hangman Page is like secretly the best like actor of the Elite.
Yeah, and I think it's something that him as performer is like dialing into who he is as a person as well, because like when like talking to him, like doing the press stuff, he definitely had a certain kind of charisma that I don't think very many people, like interpersonal charisma that I think comes across on the screen that like really is apparent live. So like
fantastic poster too. So like that, it really comes out there. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Really high level poster. So yeah, you know, this segment wasn't much other than that, but it kept it advancing the storyline. And then our final segment of the show, we see the creepy Dark Order skull mask that has the little Satan cross thing on it, the little sulfur alchemical symbol gimmick. That's, you know, it's been one of the creepers that's out there with the Dark Order, kind of a special one in all their segments, but it's totally gone unremarked on during the actual show. But yeah, again, it's like, oh, these mysterious hands are trying to throw this mask away, but the mask keeps coming back, and it's the fucking cursed Dark Order mask. You can't leave. So it's either a spooky curse or like a spooky cult coming to place the mask back, et cetera, et cetera. But just building up is like, who is behind the mask? I think the obvious, like, they're like trying to trick you into thinking it's Hangman Page. I think that's way too chalk. So it's going to be someone kind of off the main board that I might not guess, but it might just be Hangman Page. Who knows?
I hope it's not Hangman Page.
I would hate that, but
yeah, I don't know where they're gonna go with this, because like I did notice that this was like the one person that was like on the edge.
It's kind of tall too.
Yeah, the person's kind of a little bit lanky, but they're also doing the dry fit thing of trying to hide their body size.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. Like,
yeah, like, this is like the first week when I was really like kind of focusing on the ideas. Like, is that Hangman Page? And I come away with like a resounding like maybe.
Yeah, and I think that's something that.
Like, I kind of feel like an idiot for like not being able to recognize these, but like then I find out that like everyone in Dragon Gate has like actually legit got worked by those for like that kind of gimmick for like 3 months, so I don't feel quite as bad anymore.
Yeah. No, I unlike that, this might actually be a member of Strong Hearts, so who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, this was a great episode of BTE, and definitely got me back into, like, I have been a little bit reliant on Nate's recaps for a while, but especially seeing how things were going, I thought that was a pretty strong episode as well.
BTE, I feel like BTE is good now. I feel like BTE has like realized it always had like a little bit of like this like weird outsider art potential, like you could always kind of see in it even when they got long, and they've like cleaned it up now to where it's like the best version of that, and it's like, oh, this is like a B+ level good show that like also ties into like AEW canon. It's a pretty easy watch for me every week. It's an anticipated watch for me every week. Yeah. Even if it's not like the fucking main course that I'm looking to dig into.
And it's something that like is like when they release it on Mondays, it's a good way to kind of to like ramp yourself up, because you have that, then Dark, and then Dynamite.
Yeah. This like weird like semi-canon, like, hey, AEW's here, remember? Mm-hmm.
No, totally. Yeah. So we went. I appreciate you coming aboard. I did not realize we've gone 2 hours, but this has been an absolute blast, Kara. I think.
Doesn't matter now.
Hey, this was. I feel like we covered the show. Like, we got angry at the right things, but like we were reasonable about what I'll say is the worst episode of Dynamite and the worst show in AEW history. So.
I feel like there was one other really bad show that I like don't think this one was like appreciably worse than, but I cannot recall which one that was. So
it was an interesting night. It was
like, yeah, the lows on this show were like inexcusable, like even to me who tries to be an optimist about this sort of things. But I think the highs on the show existed. So
absolutely. So before we get out of here, Kara, anything in particular you want to plug?
no, I have like a shoot job. I don't need to plug anything anymore. Like why I stopped trying very hard to like wheel myself into coming into Patreon. Like I still want to do it. I'm just like not trying to like look for an outside source of income anymore. But I'm happy to fill in bullshit about wrestling with my friends for a while and have people listen to it for some reason.
Yeah. Well, it was an absolute blast having
sure.
you on. Follow Kara at Kara Onza. We're about to get ready for a bash show, so
yeah, you don't have to. Oh yeah, big time sumo talk. You know, shout outs to Enho. You think Takayasu can rise back up from Sakiwake? I'm really hoping for him, but I think his shoulder might be out.
I think he shot.
So. Yeah.
It's gonna be a weird year because it's the big thing is how long can Hakuho stay about?
Hakuho has like already said he might retire, and like people are kind of like reporting that as fact. I don't know if that's quite true to report it as fact, but Hakuho has like gone on record more or less and saying it's like, yeah, 2020 is what matters to me, the Olympics, so on and so on. So
yeah.
Anyway, we could do sumo chat. Let's get that on the Patreon. If you want sumo chat, me and Mike Spears on the Patreon, and maybe get Nate on there to just kind of laugh at how when we talk funny stories to him.
Yeah.
Leave a comment, 5-star review, sumo chat.
Absolutely. But that's gonna do it. So for Kara, I'm Mike, and we'll catch you next time.
Peace.